There's a woman named Mary Pfeiffer. And so I'm going to sprinkle her wisdom throughout the sermon from that essay she wrote, but also from a wonderful memoir she composed 2 years ago that is called A Life in Light. I'm also going to draw from a second book, The Well-Lived Life, by Dr. Gladys McCary. She is 102 years old and a doctor and a sage. Just a delightful person. There are YouTube videos of Dr. McCary if you're intrigued by her. So, living here where we do in the Midwest, our winter mornings are dark. The late afternoons often have a dusky quality, and by the time we finish preparing our evening supper, all of the daylight has left. We are once again facing dark days of winter. And at the same time, we're facing the darkness of a world at war in Ukraine, Israel, Palestine, and aggressive actions throughout the planet. Our national 24-hour news cycle is full of stories and images of those in other violent conflicts. And also, we feel the effects of climate change that cannot be ignored. We witness droughts and floods and fires that create skeletal remains out of a once lush landscape. The entire world seems to be engulfed in chaos and multiple tragedies. It's easy to get discouraged. As Mary wrote, we can really count ourselves fortunate not to be living in a war zone or a place that no longer has adequate, safe drinking water, food, or shelter. And yet these conditions are never far from us, thanks to our cell phones and other technologies. Every area where there is suffering is with us, and it can feel as close to us as if it were next door. Being caring and empathetic people, you and I share the tragic pain and suffering of our world neighbors. We're hardwired that way, thankfully. And these heavy emotions are not things we should avoid or dismiss. We shouldn't block them out at the risk of blocking out our significant positive feelings, like love and hope and joy. While it's true we can't control this turbulent reality around us, we can control how much we let it into our psyches, into our bodies and our spirits. And we also control how we choose to respond to it. I recently had a birthday in November. It reminded me that I am in the winter of my life. And sometimes I feel, like Mary, that, quote, my country and our species are also nearing end days. The darkness of the world would bring irreparable harm to me if I didn't know how to find light and joy. Whatever is happening in other parts of the globe, whatever is happening right here in our own community, we can always find the light. But we have to be willing and able to search for it, both through our ordinary days and in the unique places where our life takes us. So this morning, we'll journey together briefly to discover where the light is and how we can help sustain it. It sustains us, and how we can build our resilience and help others do the same. There's a story from Dr. McCary's book in which she shows us the power of light. Many decades ago, she and her husband took their young children to Carlsbad Caverns in southern New Mexico. The caves run deep beneath the desert, and while the hot sun blazes above the earth, below the earth in the caves, they are deeply cold, even uncomfortable. And it's also as black as the darkest night down there. When they visited, their guide gave them an amazing experience by asking each of them to turn off the flashlights that they were given when they began the tour. One by one, they clicked them and let the darkness overtake the space. The dark made everything else acute. They could hear the sound of their own breath. They could hear the kids giggling nervously. Their voices echoed around the massive space. And then the guide lit a single match. The flame was concentrated within the first inch above the matchstick, and yet they gasped in wonder as the glow lit up the whole cave. Many people have remarked on the power that light has to overcome darkness, and there is a reason for that imagery. It illustrates a remarkable and real phenomena. As Dr. McGarry and her family witnessed that day in the cave, it doesn't take much. No matter how much darkness there is, light overcomes it. Light spreads through the entire space. The darkness cannot persist in the presence of something as powerful as that. If we think of light as a metaphor for love and darkness as a metaphor for fear, we can see that we can only focus on one or the other in any given moment. That means throughout our lives, we face a fundamental choice. Where will we direct our attention? Toward the light and love, or toward darkness and fear? We are helped in our ordinary days by the light that arrives each morning with every sunrise. It creates a chapel of light in our backyards, in our neighborhoods, as the sounds of the day take life and become energized and activated. And then in the evening, there is another display of light during the sunsets that is equally inspirational, as it changes colors in the sky and a peace falls over the land in a blaze of glory. Mary describes it as, quote, "The setting sun once again offers all that it has as it whispers, 'Take these coins of gold. Take these shafts of light with pink and orange silk scarves of sky.' The sunrises and sunsets of our daily lives cannot be overstated for their gifts of beauty to us and the comfort they bring that helps steady us in a world of turmoil. We take it for granted. We seldom cause ourselves to stop and look and be present for a sunrise or a sunset, but there it is, a gift to us. I also want to discuss or share with you whenever I need a boost to my own sense of miraculous light and deep joy, I visit the website of the new Webb telescope and stare with wonder at the incredible light-filled images that are so mysterious and so breathtakingly beautiful. I feel myself transported by those images into the universe, and we are being shown worlds that were once only the domain of our dreams and our imagination. It reinforces my sense that there are no passengers on this spaceship Earth. We are all crew members, responsible for its direction, its stability, its well-being. Many of us also have caring friends and family that bring light to us. Many gatherings are full of the light of love, affection, kindness, and other positive emotions. For example, on my birthday, all of those feelings for me were sent via text messages, in digital and paper birthday cards, on Zoom and other phone calls, and personal visits that lit up that day. What a joyful, loving celebration. And then a few weeks later, as if that wasn't gift enough, 2 friends came for a luminous reunion that we hadn't seen for several months since they relocated from Indy to North Carolina. And it was a joyous, laughter and light-filled visit, blessed by that special fondness that only comes from being longtime friends. Another source of light in our lives are young children. They are natural light workers. It's a blessing if we are lucky enough to still have some of them in our homes or in our neighborhoods. And recently, I came to an awareness that I would not enjoy living in a place that only had same-age people. I really want, as much as I love older people and am one myself, I love being with the bright, shiny eyes of kids and their voices at play and their habit of running and skipping instead of walking. They are uplifting to my spirits, and they help me remember my own childhood when I brought light to adults in their world, such as the neighbor next door who always invited me to sit and sketch drawings for her that she kept on her refrigerator. I added light to my maternal grandparents' large family home. It was already so full of the light of life and love and hospitality that all of us received something good from our times together. And it was only a 15-minute walk from my parents' home and an even shorter bike ride once I got old enough to ride. And so I could visit frequently. And I realized, looking back, that those visits were like receiving vitamin C shots, brightening my childhood, rooting me in a caring environment, warming my heart with their loving company. In these dark times, art is another precious gift that brings us light. Books of poetry, fiction, nonfiction, all transport us from darkness to light. They bring humor, wisdom, and a new perspective. I watched my mom grow old, and once she became unable or uninterested in traveling physically, books were always her faithful companions, and they held a special place in the rituals of her daily life. She read books that helped her learn new things. She loved books about history and politics and political figures. She loved reading biographies that gave her insights and pleasure. And she learned by listening and reading and taking in the stories they told of how they faced their challenges. Books were light-filled portals. She was never too old to visit and enjoy. I had an insight as I was writing that I realize now that it was her love of nonfiction books that very likely influenced me to write 9 nonfiction books in that genre to date. Rituals of our spiritual life, like today's services, bring luminescence to our days. In my case, I also read prayers and wisdom from some of the world's ancient mystics. I find inspiration in the poetry of Rumi. Some of you may share that interest. I've also found interest in books by Howard Thurman. He was a famous pastor to Martin Luther King Jr. and wrote an enormous amount of poetry and prose and books, along with many other exemplars of our age, like Judy Canato and Quaker writer Parker Palmer. I pray for guidance. I make time for quiet reflection, because it's all about finding balance in our lives. When the world is so seemingly out of balance at times, we especially need to pay attention to the balance in our own lives, the way that we are living, the way that we are choosing to spend our time. With quiet reflection, we can be more fully present to our active lives. It's pretty easy to get lost in the news and in the fast-paced of the world, and I seek that balance with solitude and prayer, setting intentions, having conversations with the higher wisdom that I call God or the universe. As Mary Pfeiffer reminds us, we also have another light, and that is the light of memory. When I recall my mother's face as she read to me and my sister the book, The Owl and the Pussycat, I felt all warm and cozy inside, and I felt safe. I can remember the light from the lamp on the pages, on my hands, as I helped hold one side of the book while she read to us. There was a visible light, a golden light, that swept that chair that held the three of us, that we shared. And I felt that golden light inside and outside of my body. It stayed with us while she read to us, and it warmed my heart with a joy that was palpable. And so often we were sent to bed after the story was read, and I remember feeling that warmth getting into the bed with me and bringing me to sleep. Deep inside each of us is another light, similar to the story of the little girl who Nana told her she had a light. Inside of us is another light that is drawn from the memories of all the people we have ever loved. A favorite teacher, a kind aunt, a school bus driver who made us laugh, a best friend from high school, or maybe from our first job. When we think of them, we are filled with a light that reminds us of how grateful we are to have had such nice people and how much they remain in our lives today, physically or in spirit. And they help us get through, and those memories help us get through dark times. Like so many of you, I believe that most people on this planet are good, that they want peace, not war, that they long for the same things most of us want: a safe place to raise their families, the opportunity to succeed by contributing to the world with some skills or talents that make their hearts sing. They want something to look forward to, something to hope for. As Mary beautifully expressed it, quote, "No matter how dark these times can be, we can find light in our own hearts, and we can be one another's light. We can beam light to everyone we meet. We can let others know that we are present for them, that we will try to understand their stories and their life experiences. And that is no small thing. It turns out that it's among the most powerful gifts we can give, to let people know that they are seen, to let them know they are heard and that they matter. The easiest way to do something that is filled with light is to simply express, "I love you, I'm glad you're here." We can't control the divisiveness, the acts of cruelty and violence in society, but we can still be the light for each other and send our light around the globe with our thoughts and our collective prayers and our services like today. As Dr. McCary wrote, "Even in darkness, joy stands resolute. It doesn't hide away. It's just not always easily seen. Sometimes, particularly in these deeply challenging times, you have to squint to discern the light of joy. Of course, that's precisely what friends are for. Friends help us squint and focus and perceive the joy that is always present, yet not always seen or noticed." In closing, I encourage each of you to consider choosing your word for 2024. By choosing a single word, you give it special focus. You can be mindful of it each day during the year that's ahead, making it a value that you live by. My word this year is joy. In the midst of writing this sermon, I saw how joy and light intertwine, and that's been a sweet revelation. And so I thank you for inviting me and causing me to write this sermon today. May each of you be blessed by all the many places where light will find you in 2024. May you focus on and acknowledge the light in your daily life for the beauty and joy it delivers to you throughout the year. May you learn to craft a healing life story this year, and may you say yes to your heart's resilience, and yes to the world's connections, and yes to being alive to the light in and around your life. Many blessings.